Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We are doing it live right here and doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with a news-driven hour after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek on Money, live on the air now, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com and the on-demand Mottek on Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Big day for the stock market with the Dow flirting with the record highs. We started the day at record highs for all three of the major stock market averages. The Dow briefly popped above 40,000 for the first time. They've already printed up the Dow 40K hats on Wall Street, but the Dow ended just below 40,000 today. In fact, all three of the major averages did not continue the record-shattering rally that we saw the day before. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 39 points, settling at 39,869 after hitting as high as 40,051 during the trading day. The S&P 500 pulling back 11, and the NASDAQ composite closed down 44 points in what was a seesaw session, with major averages trying to extend the rally but did run into some resistance today. So hold on to those hats for the moment. We saw the big round number milestones attracting attention again today. And in fact, the Dow's first ever push above the 10,000 level occurred back on March 29th, 1999. That's when the Dow 10,000 hats came about. And now they're getting ready for the 40K hats. We are watching what's happening with gold as well, which has been flirting with record highs again. After that big pop yesterday, gold pulling back about $3 now at $2,382.70 an ounce. We are, of course, watching what's happening on what's fueling this rally. According to J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, the head of the nation's biggest bank, he says happy talk is driving stocks higher, but that he's sticking to his view that the odds of a soft landing for the U.S. economy are about half of what the markets expect at this point. He was interviewed on Bloomberg today. Shares of Reddit rising 9% this afternoon after that social media platform announced a partnership with OpenAI. This deal will bring Reddit content to OpenAI's ChatGPT and give OpenAI access to Reddit's data API. And we see Reddit shares moving up. As part of this partnership, by the way, Reddit will also bring new AI-powered features to Reddit's users and moderators, according to MarketWatch. Turns out millennials are leading the charge in solo home purchases these days, doing whatever it takes to buy a home, including buying with friends and family, doing extraordinary things in some cases. We'll hear more about that later this hour with Alex Bailey, lead data reporter at Bankrate.com. Of course, we're following what's happening in the Middle East and Washington, as well as here in Southern California. In Orange County, police were called to UC Irvine after hundreds of anti-Israel agitators swarmed buildings on the campus and set up barricades, creating chaos and disrupting students on the campus. Coming up later this hour, I'll be joined by UC Irvine student Senator BETO MENDEZ about what's happening there at UC Irvine. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now. Joining us live, investment expert Bryan Perry, Chief Investment Strategist and Portfolio Manager at Mint Asset Management at mintassetmanagement.com. Bryan Perry, also author of The 25% Cash Machine, which seems to be cranked up again this year. Bryan, thanks for taking the call here this afternoon.
Always a pleasure, Frank. Thank you for having me. The market here has really taken a 180-degree change in narrative here. Just, it wasn't too long ago when there was a lot of, gnashing of teeth and, white knuckle grinding going on about the business of whether the CPI was going to come in, at a good number here, whether inflation was still going to be a real problem. We did see the PPI come in just 1/10 higher than forecast, the producer price index, but then the March revisions were lower. So that was kind of a neutral effect on the market. And then the CPI came in also below forecast, which was a real relief to the bond market here. So that was important here. And also last week's Treasury auctions went better than forecast also. The demand for the long-term 10-year and 30-year bonds went much better than expected there. And then we're also seeing the market breadth really improve here, where you've got 3-to-1 to 4-to-1 advancers over decliners during the past week here during this particular run. Now today, we saw the market hit pause, as you noted in your opening comments. The gains faded into the day, and pretty much advances and decliners are even on the day, with 10 of the 11 sectors negative on the last print going into the close. So with consumer discretionary being the leading sector on the way down, and that's important to note, because next week we're going to get just a parade of consumer retail stocks that are going to report their numbers here. And we just recently here we've gotten two consumer readings here which have been negative. We had the retail sales number last week came in well below forecast for April, and consumer Michigan, what they call UMich, University of Michigan consumer confidence number came in. It just tanked, from this is for the month of May, coming in at 67.5 versus a 76.5 estimate. So, this is a consumer-driven economy here. So it's important that the consumer hold up at all levels, not just at the highest levels. And so that means middle America and obviously lower incomes as well. We saw this big pop today in Walmart, which was, indicative of what I'm talking about here, where
hit a record high, as a matter of fact.
Discerning. Yeah,
that's right.
Just
7%.
More discerning spending going on here by people, even the high-income people going into Walmart to find deals. So that was important here. But next week, we got Lowe's, Target, TJ Maxx, Elf Beauty, Williams-Sonoma, VF Corp, Macy's, Ralph Lauren, Ross Stores, Deckers, which makes Uggs, Hibbett Sporting, and Burlington Stores. So we're going to get a really good layout here, Frank, of how the consumer is doing here, and more importantly, the guidance going forward here. In terms of it's not what you did, it's what you think you're going to do going forward here, and that's how this market's trading.
On there live with Bryan Perry, and thank you for that thorough analysis. So a little bit more than happy talk driving stocks. It sounds like, Bryan, we heard from Jamie Dimon today, head of J.P. Morgan Chase, and he's been very cautious all along here, saying that expectations for a soft landing are about half of what he thinks the markets expect at this point. So we are flirting with 40K here. We actually went above 40,000 briefly today. And overall, where do you see this market go from here? Is there more runway here?
I think there is. Jamie Dimon is right to raise these concerns, with these worries about the consumer sentiment reading, because it's about long-term inflation, whether or not they can really bring it down to the 2% level, whether or not unemployment's going to continue to rise here, which we saw just recently, and whether interest rates are really going to come down on the long end of the curve to help people buy homes. The market is seeing there's a bit of a FOMO effect going on, the fear of missing out, by a lot of professional fund managers that are sitting on a lot of cash and watch this move here take place. Business spending is good. You had the Atlanta Fed come out and raise their forecast for second quarter GDP from 3.3 to 4.4%. That's a strong uptick in forecast for for what they call the GDP now, which they put out weekly here, and basically we're back to where rate cuts are possible here for this year. There's a 50% chance, according to the CME Fed Watch Now indicator, that shows about 50% chance that we'll get a quarter point cut in September, but nothing before that really that's indicative of the Fed moving on and not maintaining their higher for longer stance. So there's this balancing act here of, okay, the market's perceiving rate cuts here by the end of the year, and therefore it really glommed onto that narrative and the notion that this is that CPI number and the fact that Chairman Powell gave a relatively dovish speech the other day, saying it's looking like rate cuts are in the cards.
Very interesting. It looks like the real estate stocks have had a resurgence lately, along with the IT names driving this largely this rally. And you mentioned Walmart with an impressive gain today of more than $4 to 64 and change of 7%, hitting a record high. At this point, Bryan Perry, let me ask you the big question here with the market at these levels. Any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, there's always things to do, even when the indexes appear as if, quote, the market's overbought, which I noted earlier. But there are stocks that are just now breaking out of patterns here that look really good. And there's a lot of rotation, and there's a lot of, what else out there other than tech and industrials and other things that are working that I should get into here. Because we've seen a big move in, like you said, in the REITs and the utility stocks, and now even consumer staples, because of people thinking that the economy may still go into a defensive mode. I would say that Amazon right now it ran up to like 190. I'm sorry, about 194. It's pulled back to 184. That looks really good here. I would add to that position there if people are long Amazon. Uh, Booz Allen Hamilton is it's a government contractor, but they're actually the biggest vendor of AI software and intelligence and consulting to the U.S. government. So BAH, that's Bravo Alpha Hilo, is a symbol there. General Motors is coming out of a really nice base here. Technically, it just looks really good here. They gave a good forecast, and they're managing their EV business better than the other majors. So at $46 here, that looks like that wants to trade to 50 or higher. Merck is breaking out here is a really good story. Their Keytruda cancer therapy is being applied, finding a lot more therapies that they can go after with the Keytruda franchise. You noted Reddit looks like it wants to trade, well higher from here, given this new ChatGPT relationship here with OpenAI. RDDT is your symbol there. Silicon Motion Technology, SIMO, is a company here that also does flash NAND type stuff for AI, the business there, and they gave really strong guidance here. And I still like, and today Trade Desk was a big story on the market here, TTD, Tango Delta, that they'll be also assisting Netflix in a lot of their targeting ad business there. They're really big in this area here where Netflix is going to be dialing back their business with Microsoft and spreading the love around with more programming types of advertisers. So that looks good. And then for those that want to still look at takeout type QSRs because people are still wanting to eat out a lot, but on a budget, Chipotle, and they're going to split the stock 50-for-1 here around June 20th. So people want to probably get in on that name from there. Coming off quickly, Cracker Barrel really cracked today. It just broke down, and they noted that they just gave lower guidance, saying that people are just, again, at the middle to lower income level here and not spending as much at these restaurants here. John Deere broke down, Deere & Company, citing lower agricultural sales around the world there. I took a big profit in Applied Materials here today going into the earnings number here because the stock ran up. They reported good numbers here, but the stock is a bit ahead of itself here. Humana and CVS, still healthcare issues that are breaking down because of lower Medicare reimbursements here. And then these what they call these buy now, pay later stocks, Frank, like Affirm and other names like that, PayPal. With the consumer now starting to show some signs of slowing and pausing and all that, I think that those stocks are in trouble there. So that's kind of where that's a big avoid for me.
On the air live with Brian Perry. Let me ask you this question, Brian Perry. Just as we're told, inflation appears to be easing, although, as you mentioned in that consumer confidence report we got recently, consumers are concerned, it seems, about higher inflation, and there seems to be still upward pressure on inflation given what's going on in the Middle East and so forth. In the meantime, gold had that big pop yesterday. It's still hovering just below 2,400, near its record high at this point. What's going on with gold here? Silver also has been popping above $30 an ounce.
Very much so. People are anticipating, a further deterioration here in fiat currencies: the dollar, the euro, the yen. These monopoly currencies like the yuan, and also so that is and you've got major central bank buying by the Bank of China there, and the PBOJ. Not the PBO, that's the Bank of Japan, but and the Bank of Japan as well. So with central bank buying here leading the way into the gold market here to basically hedge their own currencies while they're trying to manage their debt.
Welcome to Talkville, the ultimate Smallville rewatch podcast. Guest star Sarah Carter as Alicia Baker, although I didn't really work with her a lot. But Tom did, and they had some real big smoochy scenes.
Yeah. Can we talk about that?
Could there be any more sex? What was a 3-page makeout scene that just kept going? Good Lord, we get it. They have chemistry.
Jump in now or catch up on any of the past seasons of Talkville on YouTube or wherever you listen.
It's just a huge bid under the market here. And these are multi-year breakouts for both silver and gold. You also just have good retail buying in here as well from people just thinking that they want something other than Bitcoin out there that's a hard physical asset that they can basically, that has a great history of being, a safe haven. And so with gold acting as a counterintuitive play to a strong market where there's a lot of risk going on right now, it's interesting that gold is not giving it back, and so it's trading right near the high, and I just think that's extremely interesting that gold is not giving it back, especially during this particular run that the market's had.
All right, what about cryptos? We see Bitcoin coming to life again this week, right now above 65,000 here, Ethereum at around 2,900. What are your thoughts about the action in the crypto world lately?
It's good. No, it's good. I like the crypto markets right now. It's a reflection that the risk on trade is back for a lot of traders and investors that want to see if there's another big move here coming with crypto. And we talked about this, in terms of what's the next target for Bitcoin, and I think it is 80,000, and here we are at 65. So I think it's setting up really nicely here, and you can either do this, the straight up Bitcoin, at one of the exchanges like Coinbase, or you can buy one of these spot ETFs right now, like IBIT, which is the ProShare Bitcoin, or the GBT, the Grayscale Bitcoin trade. And another one out there for people that want to yield on their money, you can trade the BITO, Frank, which is that's it's a Bitcoin futures related ETF, which trades it's a ProShares, but it's called Bitcoin Strategy ETF. It has a yield of 22%. This thing pays a monthly dividend. It's just a whale-sized dividend, and that's an annual yield. But still, I mean, for people that want yield and still be in the crypto market, that's your play. And it trades like water. It's like 6-7 million shares a day.
Very interesting, and of course, a lot of people tuning in these days with the market at or near all-time highs here, and the meme stocks have suddenly come back to life as well, with GameStop and AMC rallying lately. Is that a thing again here, Brian Perry? Any thoughts about those names that were popular during the Reddit rally days?
I don't think so. They had a big pop, and then it just came right back to earth here just in the last week. That had more of a crowd effect to it, in the first time around. This time when it got going there, because of this particular social media campaign took place, the Roaring Kitty guy, he's out there and pushed it really hard. But I think that came back to earth really quick. You saw AMC and GameStop really they rallied hard, and then they came right back in. So I would avoid that altogether.
Sure. Brian Perry, thank you very much for taking the call. Shares of GameStop, by the way, seeing their worst two-day stretch since 2021 after ending the session down today 30%. And AMC also taking a tumble after that recent run-up. So very good on target on that as well, Brian. So thank you very much for taking the call here. That is Brian Perry, Chief Investment Strategist and Portfolio Manager at Mint Asset Management at mintassetmanagement.com. Brian Perry, also author of the 25% Cash Machine. Brian, thanks very much for coming to the line this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Frank, and have a good weekend. Appreciate it.
You too. Thank you very much. Can you believe it? Summer's coming. The days are long, weather is warm, and swarms of tourists crowding the streets and freeways, and the pace may be a bit slower, but traffic is heavier. You might be traveling, but with travel, you're driving in an unfamiliar place, and while you're having fun in paradise, unfortunately, accidents can happen. Now, if you've been hurt in an accident at home or away from home, don't let it ruin your trip or your summer. Call the compassionate team at Fielding Law Firm. Clark Fielding understands the disruption and frustration that comes with being injured in an accident that was not your fault. Clark Fielding is dedicated to getting you the justice and compensation you deserve. Whether it's a car accident, slip, trip, fall, dog bite, or any kind of personal injury, Fielding Law is here to fight for you. Clark Fielding and his team of legal sharks at Fielding Law will help carry the burden so you can focus on recovery. You'll be treated like family. Fielding Law is a local firm that is familiar with the freeways and the trouble spots out there. Clark Fielding lives right here, too. Don't let your summer be overshadowed by an accident. Call Clark Fielding today for a free consultation so you can focus on getting back to enjoying life under the sun. The number is 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK. Your path to brighter days ahead. ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. 790 KBC welcomes, you guessed it, James Taylor coming to the Hollywood Bowl May 29th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show. If you are caller 9, call right now. 1-888-795-2222 for James Taylor at the Hollywood Bowl on May 29th. Mottek Money continues here in 790 KBC. The Dow making a push above 40,000 for the first time today, but settling just below that. coming off record highs here across the board for all three of the major stock market averages. We had that record-breaking trifecta yesterday, but a slight pullback today in what was a volatile session. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 39 points at 39,869. The S&P 500 down 11 at 5,297. The Nasdaq down 44 at 16,698. The yield in the 10-year note is eased to 4.38%. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates out there. Bitcoin up about $130 at 65,299. Ethereum down 5 at 2,931, and Doge at 15 cents. Walmart hitting a record high today, up more than $4 at 64.01, a jump of 7%. Crude oil futures moving higher, up 16 cents at 79.39 a barrel in New York. Gold down nearly $3 at $2,382.70 an ounce. Faraday Futures stock, again, standing out today among meme stocks. They have seen a big fall, as I mentioned earlier. AMC and GameStop pulling back. Shares of Faraday Futures tripling today and up 5 days in a row and up an eye-popping 5,200% over the past week, basically, recently changing hands at $2.12. Faraday Futures stock at the highest seen since November of 2023 when it finished at $2.49. Mottek Money continues here, 790 KABC. If you're just joining us, stocks pulling back from record highs today after making a run for new highs. The Dow popped above 40,000 during the trading day, but settled down by 39 points at 39,869. The S&P 500 down 11 at 5,297. The Nasdaq Composite down 44 points at 16,698. The meme stocks have taken a breather after a big run-up. Both AMC Theaters and GameStop shares pulling back today. GameStop and AMC seeing a stock slide continue into the second day. Walmart stock surging into record-high territory after hitting it out of the park in their earnings report out today. Let's take a closer look at that now. Shares of Walmart in record-high territory after the discount retail giant came out with first quarter earnings boosted by a big jump in e-commerce sales. The company beat Wall Street expectations on profit, revenue, and same-store sales and raised its full-year earnings outlook, according to MarketWatch. And the growth in sales reflected increases in transactions, more foot traffic in stores, and market share gains. Overall prices were up about 0.4 percentage points from a year ago, or half the rate of the increase seen last year. As far as inflation is concerned, they said general merchandise saw deflation in the mid-single-digit percentage range, while food and consumables prices were up in the low single-digit range. The lower prices for general merchandise coming as many consumer pocketbooks are still stretched, leading to more spending on non-discretionary items, what they need rather than what they want, and less on general merchandise, according to Walmart's chief financial officer in that report. Walmart stock shooting up about 7%, enough to lead the gainers in the S&P 500 today. It was on track today. It did close well above the March 21st record high close.
We're all juggling life, a career, and trying to build a little bit of wealth. The Brown Ambition podcast with host Mandy and Tiffany the Budgetnista can help.
When it comes to navigating your career, it really isn't a linear path. You just have to make the best choices with the information that you have at the time and just trust in the journey. Our job security is ourselves. It is our ability to bounce back. And if there's one thing that I've learned is that I'm always going to rise to the top.
Brown Ambition, wherever you listen.
61.45 and was headed for the biggest one-day gain since it climbed back more than 6% back in November of 2022. Walmart shares closed at $4.18 at $64.01 a share today. Looks like Walmart at a record high, and according to the earnings report, even wealthier shoppers are focused on value stores these days. So we are keeping an eye on that as the retail earnings parade continues. What's also been helping boost sales for Walmart has been the recent announcement of a new private brand in food called Better Goods, which their top guy said was the largest food private brand release in 20 years. He said 70% of Better Goods items are priced under $5 for the bargain hunters out there. Sam's Club sales, which is part of Walmart, increased 4.6% to $21.4 billion, to top expectations of $21.27 billion, as a 5.5% rise in transactions offset a 1% decline in average ticket prices. Global e-commerce sales also higher by 21%. led by 22% growth for Walmart U.S., fueled by store fulfilled pickup and delivery. So Walmart hitting that out of the park all of a sudden here today. We're watching what's happening in the Middle East, of course, and we see the price of oil moving higher today, up 16 cents, $79.39 a barrel. We're following what's happening in the Middle East and Washington. Israel's tanks pushing into the heart of northern Gaza today, facing anti-tank rockets and mortar bombs from militants concentrated there. Israel says Hamas is diverting aid and it needs to eliminate Hamas for its own protection after the deaths of about 1,200 people back on October 7th when Hamas terrorists attacked Israel. And also the effort continues to free the 128 hostages still held out of the 253 who were abducted by Hamas. Meanwhile, in Washington, the House has passed a bill now that would rebuke President Biden for pausing an arms shipment to Israel and compel his administration to quickly deliver those weapons in a largely symbolic vote engineered by the Republican Party in the House to spotlight the left's divisions over Israel's conduct of its offensive against Hamas. The legislation has no chance of moving ahead. A White House official said the president would veto it, and Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democrat of New York, and the majority leader in the Senate said it was not going anywhere in the U.S. Senate. Meanwhile, here in Southern California, in Orange County, police were called to UC Irvine after hundreds of anti-Israel agitators swarmed buildings on the campus and set up barricades, creating chaos and disrupting all students on the campus. Joining us live now from UC Irvine is UC Irvine's student senator, BETO MENDEZ. BETO, thank you very much for taking the call and tell us what's happening there.
Yeah, so it looks like what started as a small demonstration has it exploded yesterday into basically a very disruptive riot here. Looks like they took over the physical science lecture hall and was definitely not looking good here. Very unsafe.
Chaotic. And is it still going on?
No, luckily the police has cleared it all out by yesterday. It took them about 6 hours, and they finally cleared it all out. Yeah, they were just demonstrating all over the campus. Half of them were marching across Ring Road. There's a lot of chaos. They had to shut down campus, shut down the dining hall, shut down the buses. Yeah, feel bad for anyone who also lives on campus. It's just not a good time right now.
Just the latest example here of how campuses are being disrupted for all students that are facing these encampments and demonstrations and protesters and so forth. Were you in the middle of all that? What did you observe there?
Yeah, I saw them moving their barriers to block off and close off the lecture hall. And, you know, students are just trying to get to class here, and they're blocking it. So they had to call the police and finally get this sorted out, although the administration was very, very slow, very careful here with especially the police. They were moving very slowly to stop this. Took a whole 6 hours before it was all cleared out. Anybody hurt? I believe so. Yeah, there is definitely a lot of student and agitators that were probably hurt here, and a lot of the police officers were.
Yeah. So we're watching what's the aftermath of all of this, and what is the student body message then to the management there at the university on how this was handled, and obviously everyone's concerned about their safety. Sounds like the authorities there did an effective job of clearing it away once they were called in, but obviously a very nervous time there now on the UC Irvine campus.
Yeah, I would just say, I am a student senator here at the school, and, I love this country. And I was also tabling for my College Republicans Club and Young Americans for Liberty, and a lot of Jewish students came up to us while we were tabling, and, not only were they concerned for their own safety, they're even concerned for our safety. because a lot of these demonstrators were marching across campus. They went to the flagpoles. Luckily, they weren't able to tear it down, but the American flag or anything like that. But I would just say that the message here should be that, all these off-campus agitators that are coming here to mess up things on campus, they're really not accomplishing anything other than inconveniencing poor students here that are, really not doing anything wrong, and it's just not effective at all what they're doing other than inconveniencing people.
And outrageous what's happening there to affect the whole educational facility there. And what you got your graduation coming up soon. Any specific plans on what they're doing for that?
I haven't heard anything specific. I know today that they're having another sort of smaller demonstration at the flagpoles, but hopefully they're not trying to demonstrate during our graduation. I'm also graduating this year, so I definitely hope they're not going to ruin our commencement.
Beto, thanks for taking the call here and describing what you experienced there on the UC Irvine campus as we continue to follow what's happening around here, the universities and so forth. UC Irvine student Senator Beto Mendez. Beto, thanks for the call. We wish you all the best for your future, and congratulations on your upcoming graduation as well.
Yeah, and thank you for having me.
Mottek Money continues here in 790 KBC. Turning now to real estate, it turns out millennials leading the charge these days in solo home purchases, doing whatever it takes to buy a home, including buying with friends and family. Let's bring in Alex Bailey now, who's the lead data reporter at Bankrate.com. Alex, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Take it from the top and tell us about the latest report on millennials going big in home buying these days.
Yeah, our latest survey at Bankrate found that millennials are buying homes differently compared to older counterparts, and in many ways they are redefining home ownership norms. So purchasing a home with a domestic partner or spouse does continue to be the most common way to buy a home across all generations, but a higher percentage of millennials have bought homes in other ways, such as by themselves, with a friend, or with a relative other than a domestic partner or spouse, and this significantly contrasts from older generations who primarily purchased their homes with their spouses and domestic partners. For example, 70% of baby boomers have bought a home with a domestic partner or spouse. It drops down to 56% for Gen Xers and then 47% for millennials.
Very interesting. How old are millennials nowadays?
The age range we looked at was 28 to 43, so it's a big range right there. A lot can happen between those ages, but that's kind of the age range we were looking at for this, which, millennials essentially are the largest group of home buyers right now. They've overtaken baby boomers in the last year, so they are the ones that are really driving the housing market. And
looks like home prices still at or near record highs at this point, based on what we heard recently from the CoreLogic folks, the Case-Shiller price index, and of course availability and affordability, big issues here in the Los Angeles area. Anything else that stood out to you on this report here? Any other novel ideas on how people are banding together, not necessarily related to get a roof over their head these days?
The lack of affordable housing is certainly forcing younger generations to rethink how they approach home ownership. So buying with a friend or with a relative other than a spouse is not common, but a higher percentage of millennials have chosen to do that compared to Gen Xers, around 10%, and about 7% have chosen to buy with a relative other than a spouse or a domestic partner. And the numbers are much, much lower for Gen Xers and baby boomers, below 5%. So I suspect if we continue to see a rising share of single Americans or Americans marrying later in life, because I do think that's a key part of why we are seeing these results, and if home affordability doesn't show any substantial signs of improvement in the next few years, I suspect we'll continue to see these trends with future young buyers.
Very interesting. And since you're close to the banks, what are the banks doing to reach out to millennials? And is it Is it easier now to get a mortgage? Mortgage rates obviously have been ticking higher, the highest we've seen in years. Last year we hit a 20-year high for mortgage rates. How are the banks responding to all this?
So we do know that mortgage rates are really high right now. It's expected that the Fed will likely cut rates maybe once or twice this year. So, in general, homebuyers can anticipate that we're going to see higher interest rates for longer. That does impact affordability. A 3% mortgage rate versus 7% mortgage rate makes a huge difference in that monthly payment. But the good news is if you have it saved up for that down payment, and if you can afford to buy right now, you can always refinance down the road. But generally, I will say, it's easier to qualify for a mortgage if you have two incomes applying for that mortgage, because essentially more money means a little bit more financial security and affordability, the ability to afford a home. And so generally, it is a little tougher to try to get a mortgage alone.
All right. Are the banks cool with friends getting mortgages, people not related? Is that an issue, or is that maybe even being encouraged now to use these creative pulling resources together to get ultimately a mortgage and a home?
It certainly introduces uncertainty. I think whether you purchase with a romantic partner or with a friend or with a relative, there's always uncertainty that brings, because you're making a huge financial commitment with someone else. At the end of the day, comes down to personal preference. Millennials are much more willing to take action to find more affordable housing compared to Gen Xers and baby boomers. And again, there are these kind of bigger cultural shifts happening in the background. Generally, younger generations are choosing to marry later in life or just choosing to forego it altogether. And so, millennials are looking at other ways that they can become homeowners. And one of those ways is by purchasing with friends or even multi-generational home living, purchasing with other family members that maybe aren't a spouse or domestic partner. But it's important to definitely do your homework if you're going to make that decision, and make sure you have a contract up front that really lays out, a home ownership, kind of how you're splitting those home ownership costs, what happens if someone wants to sell, and all those important things.
Right. And anecdotally, at least, how difficult is it to get a mortgage these days?
Listen, mortgage rates are high right now. I would argue that the income that you need to afford a home right now needs to be a lot higher than maybe historically, because home prices are so high. So I actually did a study on this recently where if you want to afford a median price home in the U.S., you have to make at least $110,000. So you definitely have to make north of six figures for most of the major metro areas, especially along the East and the West Coast, especially in California and LA. So, it comes down to your income and the ability to afford a home.
Terrific, Alex. Well, thank you very much for that comprehensive update on what's happening out there. Alex Bailey, lead data reporter at Bankrate.com, live with us here this afternoon on Mottek on Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. And I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek on Money, 790 KBC.
Afford Anything talks about how to avoid common pitfalls, how to refine your mental models, and how to think about how to think.
Paula, while certainly you can mess up on $1 million a year, it is far less likely than it is on $30,000 a year.
Right.
I would meet wonderful people that were struggling with a budget that was super tight. It was 100% you need to make more money.
Make smarter choices and build a better life.
Afford Anything, wherever you listen.